Welcome to AutoSuccess Cyber Corner, the podcast for auto dealer cybersecurity. I'm Kyle Alexander, and in this series, we'll be talking to cybersecurity experts about how you can protect your dealership. We'll be discussing topics like phishing scams, partnering with a third-party company, tabletop exercises you can do with your team to prepare for and prevent cyber attacks, and much more. Coming up is Episode 1, today's cybersecurity landscape.
This podcast is brought to you by Proton Dealership IT. When your team is focused on selling and servicing vehicles, who is focused on keeping your systems secure? With a 24/7 365 operation, Proton can monitor, detect, and respond to potential network or cyber issues. Sleep easy knowing your dealership is covered.
Right now, I'm joined by Greg Uland. He is the Vice President of Marketing for Reynolds and Reynolds. Also joining me is Brad Holton. He's the Vice President and founder of Proton. Also, Nikhil Kalani. He is the Chief Information Security Officer with Reynolds and Reynolds. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So, let's start out with this. What are some of the most common threats and attacks that we are currently encountering in this industry?
You know, the two biggest ones we're seeing, I would say, would be business email compromise and ransomware attacks. Ransomware is the one that's getting the most attention because, as we've seen in the industry, there's been quite a few both on dealerships and industry providers. In that case, you're looking at a threat actor who's basically attempting to get in the system, lock everything down, and make it as painful as possible to do business. Basically, bring everything to a standstill and force you to pay a ransom. On the business email compromise side, what we're seeing is hackers are getting into email accounts, impersonating either customers or impersonating employees, or sometimes both, and creating what we call man-in-the-middle exchanges, where they wind up basically figuring out how to wire or convince a dealer to wire funds or pay funds to where they don't belong. And we've seen just tons of attacks like that end in losses upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And of course, we've seen ransomware events that end in losses of millions of dollars.
So I think a big question kind of coming out of that, that a lot of dealers have, is who is it that's creating these cybersecurity threats and attacks?
It's really organized crime. There's a lot of money to be made. And as Brad said, millions in case of ransomware, hundreds of thousands in case of BEC, business email compromise. So actually, business email compromise might be more lucrative, although the individual purse for a given attack is smaller. There's just so many more of them, and it might be more lucrative cumulatively. So it's organized crime from different groups, typically Russia, Eastern Europe, North Korea, China. Those are the bases, but it can really be from anywhere.
And maybe kind of going off this really can come from anywhere, like you were saying there, Nikhil. What maybe is a hacker's goal during a cybersecurity attack?
Yeah, I mean, every attack is really different, and the motives can certainly be different. But with a ransomware attack specifically, the goal is typically to encrypt data that a business has to make it essentially inoperable. Then they'll demand a payment that's typically calculated pretty closely off of known information about that company's revenue or profitability, and they're trying to get that payment from the company to basically unencrypt the data and give it back to them and give access back to them. So that's typically the goal in a ransomware attack. Again, everyone's different and motives can be different, but as a general rule, that's the strategy.
So maybe what can dealers do to prepare and protect themselves from cybersecurity attacks? Any tips, maybe some things that dealers should be practicing to help kind of prevent these moving forward?
Sure, let's broadly break up the protection into two zones. So we'll say the dealer's own network and then all their cloud applications. So we look at both of those separately. On their own network, perhaps the single most effective thing they can do is to have a really good endpoint protection product. Think of this as a modern day antivirus. It's also called EDR, endpoint detection and response. So high quality product. There's different ratings agencies for these products. So we use an agency called Gartner to rate products, and the top tier, called the Gartner Magic Quadrant, is really where you want to be in selecting a good product. But product alone is not enough. It has to be backed up by good quality monitoring, because these products give you signals. And if nobody's listening 24/7, you're still likely to have a problem and get compromised. So that's the key. There's a lot more to layer in, but that's one of the major areas. Brad, why don't we build on that? Why don't you add some more in here?
Yeah, so security awareness training, having your employees figure out what's going on and constantly re-educating them on what the latest scams are, what the latest malware out there, how to avoid falling for things like that. That's huge. I mean, you're going to have things like that happen in your dealership. And the trick is to have it be a 15-minute experience, not a 15-day experience. All right, if we can intercept something fairly quickly by teaching the employee not to click on something or to react when they did click on something, that's going to be helpful. Putting the right tools in place, like Nikhil said, having really good backups of all your data, your server environment, the ability to protect those backups so that if someone gets in your environment, they can't then destroy it. And the last piece, as Nikhil mentioned, is 24/7 monitoring. We've seen multiple incident responses that we've been brought into where they had some tools in place, but nobody was paying attention. It was almost like the tool was, in a closet shouting in the dark. If you don't have somebody reacting to that, seeing that alert, and within 5 minutes taking action, isolating a device, investigating, and then neutralizing the threat, it doesn't matter what else you do. You've got to have a team that's on top of it.
I'll add one more piece here, Kyle, in terms of covering the cloud. So for most people now, email is in a Microsoft cloud, perhaps Google Cloud, and really monitoring the login activity, controlling where logins can come from, just the geography that a dealer would expect logins to come from, and then monitoring, just like you monitor endpoints, monitoring the cloud as well is critical to avoid the business email compromise piece.
Awesome. Well, this is something we're going to be diving into a lot further here throughout the rest of this series, so make sure you tune into the upcoming episodes here with AutoSuccess Cyber Corner. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.